Thanks for being here, guys. Like you said, my name is Brandon, brand manager for Lifeline USA. We're the North American importers and distributors for the Lifeline brand. Our specialty being fire suppression systems. A couple other things we do, but the bread and butter for us is fire systems. Lifeline's actually a UK brand, so we're more familiar with the FIA side of it. But we're actually working on SFI systems, and we'll be launching those within the next month. So we can get into the circle track and drag racing market. Like Brian said, what we want to cover is why actually having a plumbed-in fire suppression system is so important. A lot of sanctioned bodies will require just a handheld, which a handheld is a nice complementary piece. But as far as actually having full coverage, the system is gonna be able to provide more area. You're gonna have several nozzles in a system. It's also gonna be easier to activate. Typically, you're just gonna have a pull cable, push a button, and really with fire, the goal is to always get out of the car. Ideally, you don't want the car to burn down, but the protection is there for you to protect you. Fire doesn't discriminate. It doesn't matter if you have a street car, track car, what you're doing. You may have never had a fire. You may have, Lyle's here telling this story. It's pretty incredible what's happened to him and where he's come back from. And I tell you, that man will never think twice about it. It's critical that not only with fire suppression, but you're doing everything you can with safety gear to protect yourself, which is the ultimate investment in sport. Far too often we hear about, I've been racing for so many years and I've never had a fire, or it's probably not going to happen to me. That's probably a pretty accurate statement, but at the same time, you don't know when it's going to happen. Right. I tell people, fire is like a wreck. It's going to happen at some point. It just depends on whether you're around for it, whether you're still involved, or if you got out before it happened. A little bit about the brand. Our focus is on innovation. We work with the FIA specifically on new standards, new regulations. We've actually got this system here, one of the leading on the market. It's about a $1,600 system. Meets the FIA Technical List 52, which is the most stringent demand or regulation on the market. You have to be able to put a fire out 500 degrees Celsius engine bay and 300 degrees Celsius cockpit fire within 11 seconds. That didn't actually register on a stopwatch. It did it so fast. And then you have to be able to keep the fire out for 3 minutes, which obviously that's the goal with anything. You don't want to reignite. I'm sorry? So one side of it, you'll notice it has 2 heads. The one side of it uses cold fire, which is kind of like the aqueous film forming foam. It's a little bit more environmentally friendly, doesn't have fluorine in it. It's actually like tree sap. And the other side uses a Monix powder. So Monix is a dry chem. It's not like the 20-pound, 10-pound you see crew guys just dousing cars in. It's actually much more effective, so we can use a lot less of it. That system only uses 0.3 kilograms. Yeah, so you think like a Scotch glass, it's only got about that much powder in it. That's for the cockpit, the cold fire side, the other side is for the engine. So $1,600. That's a pretty good chunk of money, but when you actually factor in, like Lyle said, how much money are you spending on the car? How much money are you spending on the go fast bolt-on parts to make the car go faster? $1,600 isn't that big of a deal in the grand scheme. That said, though, I mentioned this is a Technical List 52 8865 system, most stringent out there. Most commonly, what you're going to see in the FIA market is going to be a Tech List 16. So these are electric system. This is a little bit larger system, but there's lower budgets you can get into and still have a very nice system. Mechanical version of this is only $400. This one you can get a smaller version. It's about 2/3 the size for $700. And this is a gas system. This is a water-based AFFF. So there's a solid level of protection for every budget. I didn't bring any of the SFI systems back here. We do have those up front, so if you want to take a peek at them, we're up in the showroom. But even then, you can get into a 5-pound for roughly $500. and a 10-pound system for, I think it's around 700. So, you know, it's a decent amount of money, but like I said, the level that you're building the car and everything, it's really not in the grand scheme of things. So first thing, you know, talking about fire suppression, having a plugged-in system. We mentioned the system is going to give you more coverage. One thing I see far too often at the local dirt tracks and some tracks around me down in Virginia, you know, a lot of those, they just require a handheld, which is fine. A handheld, like I said, is a nice complementary piece. But even with that, you have to know how to use it. Right, you have to be able to, you know, get you out, but now you're part of the firefighting team, and you shouldn't be. You need to be getting away from the car, let the men and women that are trained to do that handle that. So, a couple slides here. This isn't a very, very long slideshow, but just to show kind of some of the things we've seen and kind of challenge you on what would you do in the situation. See a couple heads shaking already. So what do you notice? Pillow, what else?
Zip ties.
Zip ties. So yeah, zip ties, hold it in. It's gonna hold it there, but you're not gonna be able to use it when you need it. This one, he's got a quick release there, zip tied right there, and that bottle's been the hell and back.
Sorry, then.
Right, that's what it looks like. And here, duct tape. I'll at least give you credit. With the zip tie, you might be able to slide it out. You'll be fighting it, but you might have to slide it out. You're not getting that out. And how that passes tech inspection just baffles me. I guess you could squeeze the trigger and just hope it does something. And zip tie did too. Yep. Or something. I don't know if it's a zip tie, but it looks like safety wire.
Something.
Yeah. 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 Some sort of bracket. Yeah, I bet you're right. Just hangs by the neck there. Yeah. Having a system gives you peace of mind. That doesn't give me peace of mind right there. Like I said, most systems, whether it's mechanical or electric, different manufacturers will have different designs on that stuff. Mechanical are always the same. You're going to have two holes up here. The cable's routed from the bottom. You'll have one for you, driver, one for the corner worker. Pull the cable, it depresses this. Most have a lockout spring, so what happens is it goes through and then actually kicks back out and catches on the other side. So you're not sitting in there, you know, holding the cable or reaching over and squeezing the handle. You just pull it and you're able to get out. As far as an electric system, different methods here. The way ours works, we have an actuator in here, just a brass, what we call frangible seal, very soft metal, obviously. So what happens is you push the button, it pops a little actuator out, knocks the head off, discharges the system, sort of pressure. So, you know, either which way you go, it happens very quickly, and you can get out of the car. And like I said, with a handheld, if you can get it out of the car, you know, you have to be involved, and you need to get away and not be part of it. So the next one I want to show you, this is actually, so this is actually at my local track. This is at my local track, VIR. You'll notice he's got fuel spraying around, but thankfully he did the right thing and started to stop the car, start his egress. So think about a handheld in this situation. Even if he's got a quick release and able to do something, how quickly that fire happens. So that fire, you know, he's thankfully getting out of the car when it does occur, but it's at that moment he would be diving back into the car trying to get a handheld or something like that.
A couple of years ago, and I don't think it's some sort of pro kind of And they've got a video, these idiots put this on Facebook, and the car bursts into flames, showing the guy getting out. It's like, where's your fire suppression system?
Right.
We're putting one in now. And it's a pro team.
Right.
Like, what the hell's wrong with you guys? You got probably $100,000 in that car.
Right. And you'll notice, so looking at this video, I don't see, so what I'm looking for is a pull cable or a red button. Obviously there's a red button there, that's just the factory hazard. He made the right decision to stop the car and get out. I don't know if he has a fire system on board, but what I do know is he didn't go for one. That's not to say he didn't. In that moment, you're panicking. Practicing egress is a great idea as well. That's taking it a bit further than fire suppression.
What, did they lose a fuel line or something that filled up the cockpit?
I'm not sure. It looks like, I'll play it again. It looks to me like, I can't tell where the spray's coming from. It looks like it starts over here. And I thought it was coming from the back, but when the fire starts, it looks like it comes from around underneath the driver's side of the dash. And then it continues to kind of feed from that area.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that was, fuel line or something. I don't know why you have that in the cockpit. But if it was spraying up there and that's why, but yeah, it looks like it's coming from the driver's side. And very quickly, obviously the cockpit's filled with fumes. So it just engulfs it and just burns it to the ground. So yeah, we talked about the video. With a handheld, I mentioned when the fire first out, that's when he'd be diving back in to get the handheld and that sort of stuff. I also think you saw him kind of struggle, and in that moment you're panicking, which, justified with what's going on. You got a helmet on, Hans on, you got your harnesses, you got to get out. Thankfully he made it out just in time.
Is it you guys that you're old?
I do, yeah. Champ car mostly. We have a 93 BMW 325 we race down there. It's funny, my team's actually racing down there on South Course right now, and I'm up here and I'm checking in to see how they're doing. So like we mentioned, the handhelds are a good complementary piece. I don't have any, I didn't put it in the slideshow, but there is actually videos out there where, most commonly you'll see handhelds used in a proper situation like rally car. I've seen drivers catch fire, cars catch fire, and then the engine bays just fill up with fire, and they don't have anything on board, or the handheld they have might have expired years ago. Or they go squeeze it and nothing comes out because, that or powder systems. Powder is a wonderful suppressant. The problem with it is in our environment, harsh vibrations, impacts, it packs down, and the pressure stays in there. So when you go to squeeze the trigger, just air comes out, the nitrogen, whatever it's pressurized with. The powder is turned basically into just a big block, so nothing comes out there. So that's, veering off. Right, yeah. So veering off from that, that's one of the reasons we don't typically like messing around with powder. Now, I mentioned that system actually uses powder. We've got a pretty cool design on it. So that doesn't happen. It constantly keeps that stuff moving around, so it doesn't pack down. I mentioned earlier that the systems, many of them, whether you're looking at an SFI or FIA system, are going to come with multiple nozzles. Difference between the two being SFI wants to protect the cockpit and the fuel cell. The FIA, they're under the thought that the fuel cell catches fire, there's no amount of onboard suppressant you can carry that's going to do anything about that. So they want to protect you in the engine bay, which is more likely area that it's going to happen. And fuel cells are pretty good nowadays. That if you have an issue, it's going to be pretty well contained, or you're not going to have to run at all. Engine bay and cockpit versus cockpit and fuel cell. The systems are designed for that. We go to testing, no matter which standard you're going for, and they put you through various, not situations, but different layouts you have to be able to perform. You have a box and you have to put your stuff in there, but they will put partitions in the way, obstacles. Basically, they'll put a fire behind a wall that you then have to be able to put out and that sort of stuff. So you can't really go wrong with either one.
Do you need to smaller than that in diameter?
Then this one or this one? We do have actually this 1.5 kilogram. It's a remote charge system. The price on these begins to increase quite a bit. Typically, the other one I have up front that I like to reference with this one, it's a shorter version of this. This is a 3 kilogram. The middle would be a 2.25. Bottle is probably about that long. Typically, if you can fit that in the car, because the other version of this it's a little bit wider, but it's actually a little bit shorter. So you can typically fit that in there. What kind of car do you
I have
have?
an old car.
Okay.
There was some sort of small hours out of my knees.
Yeah.
So I bought it next to an 8 FS system.
Mhm.
And I had a lot of the house. Just there was nowhere else to put it.
Okay.
That's why I bought it.
Yeah, and that's one of the challenges with smaller cars. Obviously, I've seen people try to fit these in there, which is pretty tough. And in one of those cars, really the only thing you can do is kind of under the knees, right there in the seat.
The way the car's going is
Yeah.
that's like,
Yes.
So a quick question on the AFFF. Does it have a life? And is it refillable by owner, or do you have to send it back?
So with SFI and FIA, you have to send it into a servicing dealer. There are some of those, service in the field.
Uh-huh.
They don't carry any certification because SFI and FIA don't allow it.
Okay.
They want the bottle going back to a trained facility, trained person. And that's not to say that the average person couldn't do it, but it's just the education and having the training, knowing that, make sure you're getting the right pressure, the right blends and everything. AFFF does have a life. Our blend, we use 10% of the AFFF concentrate, real thick, gooey substance. We actually use 10% freeze-all, which is, it's a non-flammable antifreeze. So, if you're buying a system here in Michigan, or if you're buying one in Florida, or you buy a car in Florida and it's coming up here to Michigan, you're gonna get the same blend in every car, same level of protection. Then the rest of it's water. So AFFF it's a fantastic suppressant, but it's got salts and chemicals in it that will break down over time. And again, think about the vibrations, harshness, impacts that the car's taking. That stuff will begin to separate. There's also, and it's up in the showroom, I apologize, there's a dip tube in there. It's rubber spring floppy with a weighted end on it. And that's the best option. So if the car's in a rollover, then it always stays in the pickup. It's always going to be in the fluid so the system will evacuate. But with that, because it is weighted, it's metal, we don't want to coat it because if something were to break off, it could jam a hose or a nozzle during evacuation. But that's going to beat around inside the bottle. And over time, will take a toll. FIA FIA doesn't have a standard on the bottle. Manufacturers typically require 10 years. SFI says 6 years on that. But going back to the AFFF, when it breaks down around the dip tube, you'll actually start to see it kind of forming up. And like I mentioned, with powder kind of packing down, the chemicals from the AFFF kind of does the same thing. What happens is when you go to pull the system, it's blocked off and you can't get it. So, 2 years is okay. It's not a big deal. We want to get the bottles back in and service it, even with the Novec. Novec doesn't do that. But it's good. We go through, we replace all the seals, O-rings, Schrader valves, pressure relief valves, all of that. Just make sure that, they're in good operating condition. Gives us a good time to check out the internal of the bottle, make sure that there's no damage, anything like that. Something else to consider with the plumbed-in systems, and this is kind of going away from why you need fire suppression to like a maintenance and installation, doing it proper. Systems come with a predetermined amount of nozzles. Some people want to take less away or take some away, add more to it. When we start doing that, there is a science behind it. So if you start taking nozzles away, what you're doing is actually slowing down the process of discharging the system. Typically, the faster you can dump the suppressants out onto the fire, the better chance you have of not only buying you time to get out of the car, but actually putting the fire out. On the flip side to that, people will add nozzles. Not going to mention any brands, there was a system a few years ago, and the FIA required that every system be retested because they were kind of skirting regulation. And what they were doing was they had 9 nozzles, and it was a 0.9 liter system, which is, the bottle they used was probably about this long, half as skinny. And what they were doing was, at the testing house, they let the fuel burn until it was almost gone. There was no regulation on that. It was basically, you have to be able to put out this fire, they do the burn, and then they would just sit there and wait. And then they fired the system off towards the end. And that was getting by.
So with the 9 nozzles,
So there was a Ferrari at Watkins Glen for the 488 Challenge a few years ago. Head director of safety, Robert Bosworth, was standing there talking to somebody. Driver gets in the car. He wasn't dealing with that, but he's standing right next to the car. Driver gets in the car, goes to start it, and hits the fire button. Did it, and it came out like shaving cream. Didn't even hit the ground. That got back to the FIA, and that's what kind of led to that. So, I mentioned that the faster you can dump it out, the better. But you can go too far with that. And at some point, you're basically letting all the pressure out without actually sending the suppressant out. So there is kind of an exact science to make it work. And with that, the SFI and FIA have taken away all the guesswork. When we go to the board, whichever one it is, we tell them this is how we're design the system. This is how we intend for it to work. And at that rate, once it passes, it's a great system. And us, any other brand, you've passed the testing, it's an adequate, sufficient system. When you get it back to your car, go to put it in, man, all the guesswork's been taken out. You just have to install it the way it is, and it's going to work when you need it to. Next video, I think I've got a couple minutes here. I wanted to show this is a TCR race that happened in Villarreal, Portugal, a few years ago. So we're factory partners with Hyundai in this program. And what you're going to see, pretty bad wreck with the leaders. This guy gets trapped in the car. And what he's using is actually that exact red bubble right there. So that's not a top of the line, state-of-the-art system. It's a great system. $800 system. This is a factory program that uses this. It's very budget friendly. This dude gets trapped in the car, and you saw the fire, and he's able to put the fire out with that system. So for the price point, and not just us, we certainly have to be competitive in pricing and performance. But for the price point, this isn't a Lifeline message. This is a fire suppression message. And what we want to get across is why suppression is so important. I'll play it one more time.
So him setting off is pulling that red cord, actually?
So the red cord is just his side harness.
Okay.
He does it very quickly. He sees the flame, and he immediately, right there, he hit it. Like, their button is down on the console, so he hits it real quick. And, he's pro driver. He does this. A bunch of Pro Series will make you practice ingress and that sort of thing before they even let you out on track. So he knew the right steps. He did it. He hit it really quickly. Unfortunately, it wasn't a shot. But yeah, he's trapped in that car, and he had to knock the driver's window out and get out. But if he didn't have a system, if he didn't have an adequate system that worked and actually put the fire out, you can see he can't open the door or anything.
So it's electric system.
Yeah, that one is. But again, it's this system here, $800. The mechanical version of it is the exact same. It's just how you activate it. So you can still get that level of protection for $400.
What is your perspective on mechanical races? Because we have mechanical.
I've used mechanical, and realistically, so to give you an idea, this is an $800 system, gas. You can see it's a little bit smaller. The next step down from this, again, it's a little shorter bottle, a little less suppressing. It's plenty adequate for anything we're doing, you guys are doing. That's a $700 system.
Well, but, my concern about the electrical system, whether it's valid, is what if you have an accident, you're back in this.
So our system just runs off a 9-volt battery, and it's actually firmly mounted inside the battery pack. After this, stop up in the showroom and see me. I actually have one. I'll show you. It takes more power to juice the little light on there for doing your system checks and your battery test than it does to actually deploy the actuator in that system. So basically, when you head out for a race, you just do the battery test. If it lights up, you're good to go.
Because I think, the one to get one, that is
Okay. And so that's a good point. I would always run those systems separately, because if in the event of a rollover, crash, whatever, and you need to kill power, if you kill power and your system's tied into your car electronics, you have nothing. That system's not going to deploy. I think that pretty much covers it for me. I know I've gone a couple minutes over. Anybody have any questions?
Where are you in the back?
Up in the showroom, up in the front showroom,
Oh, okay.
facing the outside. Yes, ma'am.
So how long, when they send this tank in, would it take to get it back?
Depending on the level of it, most of your technical is 16, which again would be these standard systems. For us, I mean, we can ship it back within 24 hours typically. There are when you get into the 8865 technical list 52 stuff, those can be kind of a pain. There's one system. I'm the only person in the U.S. that's trained to do it, and one of 3 in the world. And those systems take about 3 to 4 hours to do, start to finish. And it's funny, I actually had a team, SRO World Challenge is racing at Circuit of the Americas this weekend, and they sent 4 bottles in last week. So 3 hours a pop. It was a crush to get it done and back to them before the race.
Because I'm sure that's something that would be very important, especially if you're racing every weekend.
Right. Yeah. So yeah, it's typically a quick turnaround.
Well, they're good for 2 years, right?
They are, yeah. So 2-year service life, and depending on the section of body, either 10-year or 6-year life cycle. Yeah. And we have dealers throughout the U.S. So if you're in California, you're here in Michigan, I think it's 2 to 3 days from us in Virginia. We don't necessarily want you to send it to us because that's not convenient for you. So yeah, we've worked hard to grow the dealer network so that usually there's a dealer within 1 to 2 days of everybody, and Motor State does a fabulous job for us. Yes.
Does freezing affect them at all if you leave it in like over winter here in Michigan?
Yes and no. AFFF systems with our low temperature blend is what we call it. They are good down to, I think it's 10 degrees Fahrenheit. The Novec are good down to 5 degrees Fahrenheit. That said, they freeze, all it has to do is thaw. We've done the tests. We recommend taking it out. I don't know if you can really tell, but I think these are 11 millimeter. You just undo those, straps come apart, take the bottle out. Super simple. So if it is going to freeze, if you're not racing during the winter, yeah, I would definitely recommend taking it out, but you do have some level of protection. I think it gets pretty cold here. I know it's very rare that we see 5 degrees in Virginia, but I think you guys see a little bit more, so I would always recommend taking it out.
I know the guys that never said mine,
Mhm.
and they do see,
Yeah.
not very often,
Yeah,
or it takes them all day.
right,
They-
right. I see another hand? Yes.
Yeah, what's the furthest away the location point that you can mount that?
I'm sorry?
What's the furthest way you can mount that canister?
You can really do it wherever you need to. Most commonly in like a full-blown race car, somebody that doesn't do a bunch of track days, most people just put it like right where the passenger seat would be. In our race car that I drive personally, we do sometimes have track days. You've got instructors in the passenger seat, so we couldn't mount it there. At that point, typically see somebody will mount it like underneath the knees of the passenger seat.
Is there a maximum lifetime that you first hold for the bottle for the first one?
There's not. Obviously, you wouldn't want to like double the nozzle or the tubing in the system, because like I said, there is a science to it. Yeah, and you'll be affecting the flow rate. But going back to your question, passenger seat, you can do it there in the floorboard, or some people will mount them like in a back seat. So our car is a coupe. but just pull the back seat out, so.
That's the one with the electric button where it would be easier to mount it in the back, so the line goes
Right.
forward wherever.
Right. And actually going back to your question a minute ago, between mechanical and AFFF. So mechanical and electric. I personally prefer the electric. They're very simple to install.
Diesel.
Yeah, super simple. And again, the battery pack or the power pack has a test function, so you can check to make sure your wiring is right and that your buttons will operate without actually having to fire the system. Very rarely, I've only known of it twice. Thankfully, they weren't our brand, but that's not to say it couldn't have happened to us. A buddy of ours was actually racing up at Palmer road course, and they have these massive rocks in the infield for decoration. Well, what happened was he came out of the corner, right tires got up on the curbing. He spun one of the tires, it shot him off the track. He hit it head on, flipped the car, broke both of his legs, twisted the chassis, like the chassis was a complete write-off. And in that process, because the cables have to be taut, if you have slack in it, you go to pull it, there's a gap there, it's not going to do anything. So they have to be tight, and what happened was when the chassis twisted, it actually broke the cables. So he's upside down, broken legs, car catches fire, he goes to pull the cable, and the cable just comes out, doesn't do anything. So in the rare, crazy circumstance, I have seen cables break. Again, not our brand, but it could happen to anything. So that's why I personally like the electric better.
One other thing you mentioned yesterday at our meeting too, Brandon, is the mechanical systems do take a little bit more maintenance for the cables. That might be a good thing just to...
Yeah, typically what we recommend, our car, we've got one by the driver's window and one like underneath where the radio would be. It's a street car or a race car. So underneath where the radio would be, I have seen them underneath like the hood where the windshield cowl is. And certainly by the window they can be affected because, I'm a road racer. We race in the rain, it doesn't matter. Car gets wet, you get wet, and you just deal with it. But with that, you can have moisture get onto the cables. They're sitting in there, they can rust, they can freeze. So it's good practice and good maintenance. Take them out, make sure they're fine. If they're starting to get any rust, hit them with a wire brush, something like that, and then just spray them with some dry graphite glue. Super easy maintenance, but they do have more maintenance than what an electric system would have. The electric systems, all of our buttons are waterproof. So really the only maintenance is replacing a 9-volt battery and then just testing to make sure the system's working before you go on track. Or really, I guess, before you head out for the week. So, yes?
Yeah, 2 questions on the electric. Can you only run one button, or can you run like one for the driver and one like pillar for the track crew? You have 2 separate buttons.
Yeah, so every mechanical system comes with 2 pull cables. Every electric comes with 2 momentary switches. So yeah, we encourage you to run both of them. If you were to put one, in our car underneath the radio and you get knocked unconscious, nobody's gonna be able to get to that. So yeah, we highly recommend that. And you just run them in circuit, and basically, whichever one creates the circuit is gonna pull the system.
Another question is the button, how sensitive, are worried about accidentally discharging? What kind of setup is it?
Yeah, super easy to push by design. Typically they have a collar around them that sticks up. Our pro race team, they will actually take, they've had special decals made and put over it so that, very clearly, if you hit this is what's gonna happen. We do offer a protective switch, which actually has a clear cover that pops up and down. So that could be an option, and really that could be plumbed in or used with any electric system. Anything else? Cool. I appreciate you guys. And like I said, I'll be up in the showroom if anybody wants to talk to me. Got some systems up there we can go over and answer any questions.
Cool, yeah, thanks again, guys. Like I said, go see the showroom.